Good morning. I hope everybody is doing well this morning. I am Debbie Silverberg from the Rockland Arts Festival, and I will be hosting this morning's breakfast with the artists. I hope everybody has their coffee and are looking forward to this exciting event that is going to be hosted by Erwin Ang, who is an artist and an entrepreneur. Just for some clerical things, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and please hang out to the very end because we'll be giving out a prize from one of our wonderful sponsors. I'm gonna turn it over to Erwin. Good morning, Erwin.
Good morning. Hi, everyone. Like Debbie said, my name is Erwin Ong. I'm an artist, illustrator, and muralist. That part, fingers crossed, working on that. I'm based in White Plains, and I am very excited to host this event as part of the Rockland Arts Festival. This is breakfast with the artists. So it's going to be the festival. It's going to be 2 weeks of all these virtual and in-person events. It kicked off yesterday. It's going to go through February 9th. And you can get more information at rocklandartsfestival.org to get all the information about the event. So we hope to see you participating in all these wonderful sort of events throughout the 2 weeks. So what we're going to do today is have some conversations with the artists who are participating in the festival. And just as a tip too, if you go to the festival website, there are a list of the participating artists there, and we have 12 of them here with us this morning. And what we're going to do is just introduce them in pairs and just have a very quick conversation about their art, some of them about their process, some of them about their inspiration, some of them about what message they want to convey with their work and through their work. As Debbie said, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And if we can't get to them today, these are maybe questions that you could ask of the artists directly afterwards. Certainly, if you go to the website, there's ways to be able to get in touch with them and to keep following them and their work. So why don't we start with our first pairing? So it'll be Barbara Chen and Eric Kollin. So what we're gonna do first is for Barbara and Eric, why don't you just give us a short introduction of you, say your name, where you're based, and a quick description of your creative practice. So Barbara.
Hi, I'm Barbara Chen. I live in Tapan over here in Rockland County. And Erwin, I want you to know I too am a muralist as of today. This is one of my favorite pieces. It's a jungle out there, elephant edition. I don't know if you can see the elephants. Everything I do starts with a photograph. I'm always looking around, but even if I see something I like, I have to take a picture. I have to flatten that surface, make it 2D, just like the rest of my work. Get the photograph, turn on some music, mostly jazz, and sit down and start drawing and just start recreating the basic shapes. There's rhythm, there's flow, and then I do a drawing. And if I like the drawing and I want to continue, then I do a painting. Cool. That's my process.
Okay. And Eric, what about you?
I was going to ask Barbara a question. Because do you mind, Barbara? Can I take your last minute to ask you a question?
Go for it.
So tell me a little more about because just seeing how you just organize these pictures into these different layers and cutouts and stuff, mystifies me. And I just wanted to hear a little more about that because I'm really impressed every time I see your work.
Oh, why, thank you very much. And actually, that was part two. That was question two, but I'll get into it now. When I was in college, I was really into Impressionism, especially Cézanne and Cubism. And I was taking a course, and that's what they do. I mean, they block it out. And I was taking a course, and the teacher wanted us to do a drip painting. So I started with the drips. Well, I did a wash, it dripped. I turned it sideways, it dripped, and there were all these shapes. And then I said, oh my, what can I do with this? And I created a sunset, and it was beautiful. And that was it. I mean, from there on in, that's how my mind saw the world.
Yeah, and I encourage everyone to visit Barbara's website, again, linked through in the festival page, because she does have a page there, 2 pages actually, where she describes her process. And that's what actually led me to ask you this question today, Barbara, is seeing that, and I know that doesn't happen, maybe that doesn't happen with all your paintings, but the fact that there is this sort of process that you can follow where
No,
your
that's
mind
all
can be,
that's what I do.
oh, then great. Yeah,
I
even
don't
better.
just say, "Oh, I'm going to sit down and do a painting today."
Yeah,
With a paintbrush.
right.
I do a photograph. I
Right.
do the drawing, and
Yeah.
then I do the painting. I can't
Yeah.
do it any other way.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, I encourage you all to do that, to go see Barbara, that page on Barbara's website. Now, what about you, Eric? If you want to just go back to your introduction about
Sure.
you and your work, and then we
Sure.
can go into your process.
My name is Eric Kollin. I live in Riverdale, New York. I do acrylic illustrations. I try to capture a moment of emotion, whether that be fear or joy or tension. I was very influenced by comic books, but in the paintings, I want to capture that whole story in one image. And I like to use old toys or iconic historical fictional characters. And now lately I've been doing cats. And in this painting, I've kind of combined the two. So let me talk about the process a little. So it either starts as a photograph or a sketch at a diner. So just to show you an example, here's a menu. And here's, I'm playing around with this sketch. And then I go to the Xerox machine at Staples and blow it up. So it's hard to see here, but so I can kind of rub the back on and get lines onto a canvas and keep the same proportions. I mean, I was at an Italian restaurant and had to rip up, the paper menu. Again, it's kind of fading out here, of a sketch that became an elaborate painting, but it started out as just me being bored. Lectures are terrific because I have nothing to do with my hands. So in this painting, it actually starts out with a photograph of my cat. And I love the photo, which again is hard for me to navigate with the virtual background, but you kind of get the hint. Then, I did the sketch. I blew it up. I did a line drawing of it. I kind of kept those proportions intact to do the pencil drawing. And then later in the pencil drawing, again, I'm trying to navigate this. I did add Mickey Mouse at the bottom because I needed something to tell a story other than the cat just posing. So eventually that becomes a black and white picture. Side to side. I'm not quite sure how. This is a movie magic. But anyway, it becomes a black and white painting. And then eventually I did the painting over again because I kind of really enjoyed it as a black and white and did it as a color. And so, and in terms of the painting and where I do it, I mean, I have a drawing table in my bedroom, but it's not much. I go to a class once a week where I just use it as a studio space. I work very small. This is my painting kit. Everything fits in here. I'm using acrylic paints. This is half tube size. So everything's very portable. I can be in a park sometimes I'm going to a coffee shop with the paints if they
Mhm.
allow me.
Oh.
And that's it. So, and the more I paint into it, the scarier it becomes, because you start falling in love with the pieces and the lines, and every next stroke could be like damaging to it. So there's always this fight between, especially with a painting like this, between the accuracy, getting that cat to look like a cat, and the spontaneity of it. And there's a certain point where I leave the photograph and just kind of go nuts. And now I was able to do that with the background and with Mickey, So that's it. I think I've covered it.
Yeah, great. You must be excited with a version of Mickey going into public domain now.
Actually, I'm more scared of it because you can always, I'll tell you why, you can always use these characters for parody. That was never off the table. Seeing Winnie the Pooh as a horror figure was just a little nuts for me. So I think, I kind of want to keep it in the realm of creative parody, and whatever Mad Magazine was able to do without people actually using the actual thing. I feel bad for the corpse that didn't realize it'd be around in 100 years.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Eric and
Thank you.
Barbara. So now let's move on to the next pairing. It's Mackenzie and Scott and Collette. Fournier.
Fournier.
All right. So maybe Collette, I'll have you start again. For now we're just gonna do your name, where you're based, and a short description of your creative practice.
Okay, my name is Collette Fournier. I'm currently living in Rockland County, Spring Valley, New York. I'm very proud to always say I'm a Brooklynite and Harlemite and from Queens. So I'm a city girl, basically. And, I'm multidimensional. I'm a photographer by trade. I've been doing photography since I was a little girl, like 5, 6. But I am multidimensional, so I'm kind of like all over the place. What has helped me a lot is to start to work in a series over the last few decades, because that kind of focuses me. But I'm inspired by other visual artists, by musicians, by jazz. I was happy to hear somebody mention jazz. I'm in a couple of collective groups where I can see other people's work and we can talk about photography and where we are in this current decade, and with all of the different digital changes that are going on. I just have a piece of my work. I should have asked if I could share it, but I do have a piece of my work, which was inspired, basically, I call it, it's a series called African American Women in the Visual Arts. And this particular woman is, she's now deceased. She's a woman named Camille Billups. And I started in grad school, I started to play around with fabric in my photographs. And I'm still kind of playing around with it. But again, I wanted a theme. And I also wanted to play around with scanning and fabric. In my history, my family are all sewers and seamstresses, and so I've always had a love for material. I particularly like to work with African fabric and also scan different. So it's basically I'm trying to tell a story with my work. And I really want to get back to that. What I found is a lot of my friends don't want to be photographed. So I don't understand why, especially photographers. I don't understand why that is. But so that's kind of put like a little bit of a hindrance to the project. But there are new younger people coming up and I'm sure they want to be photographed. Let's see. And I'm also encouraged very much by family. They've been extremely, extremely supportive. My father was an artist, portrait artist. My cousin is an artist. So, we do have artists in our family. So, we all can kind of encourage each other. I also teach. I'm very inspired by teaching. I'm inspired by my students. They are just absolutely wonderful. And again, the technology has changed. So if you kind of want to stay in the groove, you have to be in there with the technology. And I'm free to
Great.
answer any
Oh,
questions. And anybody have any questions?
thank you for that, Collette. All right, Mackenzie, on to you. Just again, your name, where you're based, and your a description of your creative practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Mackenzie Hecklin-Scott. I'm based in Westchester County, actually Hartsdale, so right below White Plains. Hi, Erwin. Hi, neighbor. And I'd like to say multidisciplinary artist. I went to school for photography. I got a master's in marketing because, you know, I need a job, but I do everything else in between. So graphic design, my main body of work is painting, mainly, and like drawing. But yeah, like that's kind of, I take every inspiration kind of from everywhere, you know, emotions, what's happening in the world, just like the extraordinary within the ordinary, I like to say. Just because, you know, like a regular house plant, you're like, okay, it's a house plant, but like there's more to it. I like to like explore like what's beneath the layers. Even like when I do photography, for example, like I always like to say I like the in-between shots. So if, you know, like the in between the poses, so someone's like posing one way, the switch over, I like to document the switch over because that's when you get the actual raw emotion of like what they're feeling in the moment. But can relate to Collette when no one wants, as a photographer, you don't want to be photographed, because I get it, you hide behind the camera. I'm trying to get past it, but you hide behind the camera, so I absolutely get it. But yeah, that's kind of my practice. Like I take a lot of inspiration from everyday life, my own journey as like a young adult coming up in literally this hellfire of a world, and just everything in between, and just how I'm navigating. So I like to kind of draw inspiration from everywhere.
All right. And so I'm glad that you both said that you are sort of multi, you know, sort of hyphenate in that's a space you occupy. And the question, you know, to take it further for me is, does the inspiration sort of dictate the medium, or is it the other way around? Like when you said it's houseplants, you know, are you then thinking, oh, this would be better as, you know, a painting or a photograph? Or are you thinking, oh, I'm looking for something to photograph or to paint, and then I end up at houseplants? Or is it somewhere in the middle?
It's kind of, for me, it's in the middle. It really just depends. Right now, I'm doing a nice combination of my little COVID craft. So what was it, embroidery, like just hand stitching with the painting. And over, I mean, I couldn't photograph people. I love photographing people. So like it's getting back into that, and just kind of incorporating that back in. With music as well too. Like I'm doing a series right now of just me remaking album covers. Like I'm in the process of remaking the Beyonce's Renaissance album because it was a great album, you know, just like things like that. So it really just depends on what the actual inspiration is for me.
And Collette, what about for you? Oh, you're muted right now.
I'm sorry, what were you asking me?
And how is it for you as far as, you know, does the inspiration follow sort of the medium, or is it the other way around, or is it somewhere sort of in the middle as far as how you
I don't know.
meld the two together?
I'm visual, so you know, oh gosh, it could be such a long story, but I'm visual, I'm audible. I mean, I like to hear. I'll give an example. The other morning when it snowed, I heard people outside, our maintenance crew outside shoveling. And so that's what I heard first. I jumped up, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I grabbed my camera. In this case, it was just the iPhone. And I opened up my side window, which has a really nice view because I'm on the 3rd floor. And I had to wait. It was a decisive moment. I posted it on my Judah Fournier page, if anybody wants to see it. And it was an inspirational moment, but it happened because I heard the sound. And from the sound, I knew what side of the building they were on. And I just put everything together. I'm still in my pajamas and I got the shot. So it's everything, you know, travel. I love to travel because you see different things. You know, I love to see, you have to hear, and the music is so inspirational, you know, especially older classic music, even doo-wop. I listen to, you know, like music Saturday mornings, the older songs, and they make you dance and sing, and you know, it's everything. It's just I've done everything from television to movies to, you know, et cetera, anything visual, I'm there.
I love it. All right. Oh, and yeah, the last thing, you know, that artwork that you showed us earlier, and you'd mentioned that you were using fabric in that. Is that sort of collaged, or you mentioned scanning the fabric? So is the fabric also essentially photographed when you incorporate it into the
Yes,
work?
yes. And I'm stitching it. I'm stitching like different pieces together, sort of like a collage, and then I'm adding the photograph to it. And then once everything is collaged and glued down and set down, then then it's flattened by the scanner. Yeah.
Great, great. So
Because
you
it's
don't display the originals with the fabric collage. It's the final sort of piece is the
sometimes I
scan.
do. Yeah, sometimes I do. And I've had at least two or three of the pieces enlarged and framed. So it's a photograph at that, it's a photograph at that,
Right.
but sometimes I like to show the original work
Right.
because it's very different. And like I said, it's that generational thing of just feeling my ancestors, feeling my family, watching my mother cover a couch for me. It's that fabric thing. It's just the feel of it is beautiful.
Great. Well, Collette, Mackenzie, thank you so much for that, for sharing your inspirations with us. So now we'll move on to Fran, Sisco, and Roberta. Is it Begaye? And so maybe Fran, so you're both muted right now. If you want to just unmute, and maybe Fran, I'll start with you. Again, we'll just say your name, where you're based, and a little bit about your creative practice.
Francisco. I'm based in New Rochelle in Westchester County, and I have my studio combined with my office. I have a left brain as a CPA and financial person, and my right brain is as a visual artist and songwriter and writer and performer. And that just reflects different stages of my life, actually, and the ADD aspects of how my brain works. And that was where I'm based. And what was the last part of that, Erwin?
Just what kind of art that you make, and it sounds like.
Okay, I guess mostly it's abstract acrylics, and I'll show you a couple of examples. And then it's also wood sculptures, and they come out of an idea, like a message that I'm thinking about, how I'm affected in the world, either by authenticity, like, for example, becoming a transgender female. That had a big effect on me. I put a lot of it in song, in poetry, in plays I've written and stuff, and then in visual art. So I'm affected that way. And then I started getting involved in these wood sculptures. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick examples. That's okay to do that, right? So this is a right there. I don't know if you could see those three like tripods with me standing between them.
Yeah, we see it.
I took these limbs that had fallen off of trees, and they were going to be chopped up and thrown out, and I wanted to find some purpose because I'm into repurposing things. So then I painted them, and they looked to me like they were legs, like of a fledgling legs of three animals, like a zebra. So I painted stripes and two others, and then I had these three, and I thought that conveyed a concept of unity, that in the trans community, different people could still have a unified outlook, and it's still like getting up on weak legs, in the beginning anyway. So that was like the message. So I had a kind of a message that I was creating with that. This one, similar, because I like this design. This is at the Pelham Arts Center, where they were on display for a year. This is called, this is Lovers. So these two have they're similar. The parallel lines sort of match, but they have different, colors and shapes a bit, about two individuals, and then this one I was into the idea that we're an endangered species. So I tried to create like an elephant look combined with a tiger. So that is the thin-bodied elephant combined with tiger legs, you know, the color of those legs. So that too was on, that's in my side yard, but that was at Pelham Arts Center. It's about 10 feet long and stuff. So often it's these ideas that I'm looking to convey, and I use whatever I could use. Someone mentioned, I think it was Mackenzie mentioned album covers. So that's an album cover of taking Rubber Soul album by the Beatles and doing it differently. And what I did is I took the lyrics, I strung them together into a message of a new song. This is about diversity. I'm really into DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is showing a face of all races and being challenged by stuff coming down from the sky and soldiers on foot. So
that's great.
Thank you. And this one conveys being in a prison, because many of us feel like they're trapped. And then you notice that a couple of those bars were broken apart, and they were either opened up by someone else helping, because I also believe in, and spirituality runs through a lot of my work, people being helped by other people. This one, last one here, I'm going to show. This is, I was 30 years old and someone came into my store at the time with a bat. No, they didn't come in with a bat. I was showing them a bat to buy for their nephew.
Oh.
And they turned it on me, and they hit me over the head 3 times with a bat, nearly killed me, and 14 fractures and stuff. And then I almost always look for a silver lining in something. And that triggered, and it's too long of a story to tell now, but that triggered one of the most positive things in my life, and seeing the influence of prayer and deep faith in my life. And also on that topic of silver linings, so I usually I have a topic in my mind, I visualize it in my mind, I sketch it out like a number of other people were saying. After I sketch it out, then I usually paints parts of it or whatever, or I'll take, this is silver linings. So I was just thinking, you know, silver linings from the sky leading to various open doors within someone's life. So almost all of the pieces, I talk about them. That's basically the idea, and it triggers conversation and collaboration with other people and other mediums.
I love that. And
So right now, for right now, example, I'm finishing up. I have a book of 400 poems and song lyrics, and throughout my life, 50 years of these writings, and now it's really brought me, I could see my life differently and the changes, and change is another big thing, as it was when I became full-time female 12 years ago. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Fran. That's a lot of, and what you said there about at the end about using the art as a way to start collaboration. And I think that's what I wanted to get at too. So we're not just talking to people who appreciate art, but also using it as maybe as an opportunity, a trigger to create more conversation with other artists.
When I started doing art in the DEI field, I realized how much prejudice and racism and phobias that I had within me, not thinking that I did, but I realized when I started doing some work in conversations with other people. And then what I did is I deliberately went into another playwriting to write plays on that and using comedy. And that was another thing. I've been doing stand-up comedy for a number of years now as a way to cope with the stress of life. So in that, you get so much collaboration with other people. It's all about collaboration, being influenced by other people.
Yeah.
It's love. It's all love.
Yes. Indeed. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Fran. All right. So now, Roberta, sorry, we got sidetracked. All great sort of topics here. But yeah, if you wanted to just introduce yourself, where you're based, and a little bit about your creative practice.
Jag är Roberta Begaye the Nenchla, Twitch. My name is Roberta Begaye. I'm Navajo, the artist from the Navajo Nation. I'm based in Albuquerque, New Mexico right now. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and can you talk a little bit more about the kind of art that you make, and yeah, sort of a little bit more about that.
I started painting, actually. I started painting is my primary discipline, but I started also being a multidisciplinary artist. I do silver making as well now. I started going into printmaking and a little bit of exploring oil as well. And it's not just acrylic.
Great.
And then on the background here is one of my paintings that I did. So.
Yeah, and just on that topic of what we were talking about with Fran, do you find yourself, or is there a community that you work with other artists where there's a lot of maybe opportunities for collaboration and being inspired by the other creative people in your community?
There is a lot of collaboration. I work with a lot of Native American artists and also different artists as well who are challenging themselves with different takes of artwork that they want to explore. So we go back and forth, exchange ideas, and help one another and kind of like teach one another as well. If somebody wants to learn how to do silversmithing, we find who is willing to share that knowledge, and we take time to introduce the basics to them and see if that's a fit, and if it is, and then they run with it pretty much.
I love that, and I think that's, there's opportunity for something like that to happen here too within these next 2 weeks, right? Both for people who are artists and maybe people who people who are participating in the festival as artists, and also the people who are just attending. I think there's opportunity here to be inspired, to think about collaboration, to reach out to people and have conversations where, yeah, even learning something like that, right? The silversmithing, yes. If you're curious about it, you learn about it, and maybe you decide that you learn that it's not something you actually want to do. That's an option too, right? Where it might not be for everyone.
Yes, correct. Yeah, always encourage like talking to other people, reaching out to other people, not just with your buyers or your collectors, but with other artists as well, because there's this huge, rich network in which we can collaborate and learn from one another is what I'm very, very big into. I always try to create and maintain connections. That's what I like to do.
Thank you, Roberta and Fran. All right, so we'll move on now to Gary, Schwartz, and Sharon. Seidl?
Yep.
All right, so maybe Sharon, I'll start with you. We'll just do the intro and the question. So if you want to first just introduce,
sure,
with your name, where you're based, and the art that you make.
Okay, my name is Sharon, but really my name is Fran. I formally, my name is Sharon, but people call me Fran, so I am Fran. The art that I make is, I've been in publishing pretty much my entire career, 30-something years working in magazines and working as creative director for many different well-known publications, and also in music publishing. So I've done a lot of record albums and billboards and souvenir brochures for various artists. I feel like I'm at a point now where I really am exploring the things that I want to do for me. I come down to my studio, I have never a clue, not a clue. I come in, it's what I feel in that moment. I do a lot of illustrating at night. I'm really just going from deep inside. So I could do something extremely humorous, something street art, something floral, like what's behind me, which I just did the other day. I never know. I just come down and I start going at it. And it's usually an expression of my feelings. And they're often, my work is very high energy. And I feel like I kind of, I aspire to give people a feeling when they look at it. And it's just what I'm feeling at the time. So I think I'm finally working for me is where I'm at. I've hired thousands of illustrators, and I know that goes to the next question that you had of like,
yeah,
people always ask that question, by the way. It's a great question. I was actually laughing when I got the question. I was like, oh my God, like if I had a penny for every time someone asked that question. And actually I have a really good answer, because art is about communicating. And especially when you're doing art for a publication or an artist or a band or a Broadway show or whatever it is, you're communicating. And I think the most successful illustrators and photographers and artists that I've hired are ones that really get that concept of, I have to communicate. I have to, they're asking me to do this because that's the first thing that people are going to see. They're not going to know what it's about. They're not going to know what the story's about. They're not going to have read the story. The first thing they're going to see is that image. And so the image actually has to tell the whole story, give you that feeling, give you that dynamic right from the get-go. So the most successful artists that I've ever worked with, they're really great at communicating. That's the whole point. And I think we're all doing that. We may not know we're doing that, but you know, that great painting of the cat with Mickey Mouse, I love that. That was great. I mean, it was, to me, that's exactly, like, I knew exactly what that was about. And that, I think those are the types of artwork that work so well. And it's also, you know, you look at really beautiful aesthetic pieces that could be in someone's home. That's also communication. It's a communication of what this house is supposed to feel like when you walk in it. This is the mood. And I think that often my paintings are like all over the damn place. Like everyone's like, Sharon, you have to figure one thing out. I'm like, no, I don't. I really don't. Because I'm just still communicating. I'm just doing it based on the feeling that I have at the moment. And whatever that is, it could be something very spring-like and floral. I mean, it's cold, dreary week. I did something bright and cheery. I could have another week where it's sunny and beautiful outside and I'm doing something dark and gloomy, and maybe it's gritty and street-like, or I'm using spray paint and like making funky stencils, you know. I don't really know, but that's pretty much, I hope I answered the question.
Yes, you did. And yeah, I know Collette is hopping off, so thank you for taking the time. And yeah, we'll make sure to connect everyone with your contact information so they can get in touch with you. Yeah, and so Sharon, that was great. It's exactly what we wanted to we wanted to get that insight from you. So I appreciate you sending that. And just a little bit about your own process, right? I love that you've seen the spectrum where from Barbara, she's like, when I work, this is exactly what I do, you know, and it produces brilliant work. And then in you, it's sort of like the other end of the spectrum where it's from the starting point of the emotion, what you want to communicate, to what media do you use, right? It could be spray paint, it could be that, and it still shows as you.
Builds on itself. And
exactly.
I think also had, you know, years of experience of designing for other people, like, you know, years of like being told what I have to make. I feel that this is just finally like, no, I'm not, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do whatever the hell comes in my head. And, you know, so that's.
And it looks great. I love it. It's beautiful.
So we'll see. Tomorrow it'll be really, tomorrow it might be a spray paint mouse like carrying a stupid sign. I don't know.
Right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing what comes. Yes, definitely we'll be staying tuned. All right, so now we'll move on to Gary.
Hey there.
Hi. So yeah, if you want to give us a little bit of an introduction to you, where you're based, and what kind of work you make.
Sure. So I'm Gary Schwartz, and by the way, Erwin, you're doing a fabulous job as moderator. You're really doing great. Enjoying all of it. Gary Schwartz. I'm a Coney Island, Brooklyn, New York native, where my studio practice currently exists, where I live as well. I'm an art teacher full-time at a private school in Manhattan. Going back to Coney Island, my dad was the manager of Nathan's famous hot dog emporium in the 1960s. So Nathan's and Coney Island informs a lot of my work. I'm a traditional hardcore photorealist painter. I'm kind of the polar opposite of Sharon in that there is nothing spontaneous about what I do. My work is pre-planned within an inch of its life. I have a dream about what the finished painting is going to look like. And also, just like Barbara Chen, who I have a lot of similarities with, I think, in my practice, it has to start with a photograph. And I cannot sit in front of a white canvas and create what I create without a photo reference. And I like to use my own photography for most of my work. And I also typically work in a series. So I have different topics that will create 20 or 30 paintings based on that concept, which goes back to my advertising days. When I graduated School of Visual Arts in the 80s, I went right into advertising because back then you couldn't make a living as a painter. And people said you could be creative and make a lot of money, go into graphic design and advertising. And so I was a madman on Madison Avenue for the first 10 years of my artistic life until I hated it and couldn't do it anymore. And like Sharon, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I didn't want to work, based on clients' notions of how I should be creative. So between when I went cold turkey and quit advertising before I found my calling eventually, which was high school art teacher, which was my calling. And this is my 30th year of high school art teaching. But between advertising and teaching, I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and MoMA at their information desks, just to make a buck and stay within the art world. And I started to read everything I could get my hands on about the photorealists because I had discovered an ex-advertising guy named Robert Cottingham, who became a very well-known photorealist painter. And he started becoming very famous doing movie marquees and neon lights. And then I found Richard Estes, who was doing telephone booths and New York storefronts and 1960s cafeteria storefronts and making them so photographic, but he went beyond the photo because you can be a photographer and have a photograph, but this was hyper realism. It went beyond photography. It's a definite photographic reference, but there's sensuality because of the paint, because of the texture, because of the surface of the canvas. So it's kind of marrying the immediacy of photography with old-fashioned building up of layers on canvas. So that's where I'm at now. The painting behind me is part of a series called Anachronism. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of at an oblique angle, but I love the notion of time traveling, and I also am crazy about Vermeer and the 14th century golden age of Dutch and Flemish painting. So I don't know if what I'm doing is legally in the public domain, but I'm appropriating my forefathers of Dutch painting. And so this is called Day Watch, and it's using the characters in Rembrandt's Night Watch, but time traveling them to the boardwalk in 1990s Coney Island.
I love it. I love it. And just Gary, just to be mindful of time.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
All great.
I'm sorry.
No,
yeah.
this is all wonderful. But if we could just I mean, if we can even reduce it just to sort of, one or two sentences, I'm really curious about if you have seen or what you have seen as the changes or evolution of how young people, the people that you're teaching are approaching just exploring the creativity. Have you
Absolutely,
seen
yeah.
anything different, or is it the same? Just, yeah, if you could
No, well,
touch on that real
in my
quick.
30-year career as a teacher, the change has been technology, and starting out with kids who were really drawing like crazy and filling up sketchbooks to current day where they're all on iPads and doing I can't think of the name of the program, but these graphic illustration programs and anime. And so that, before I got into using Photoshop as my own, real tool for how I create my own work, it always starts with Photoshop. I was getting a little depressed that, I wasn't seeing the fine art that I had when I was a high school student. But now I'm finding more and more 16 to 18-year-olds wanting to study oil painting, wanting to do underpaintings, build up with varnish, get more academic, and many of my students are now applying to traditional art schools. RISD, we had a girl get a full scholarship to SCAD very recently, and they're going for painting, for drawing, for fashion illustration. So I love that the state of the art is good, in that it's, I feel, going back to the more traditional ways of how I came up in the world of art. Not to negate the technology, which is fabulous, and I'm convinced if Seurat came back to life, he'd be using Photoshop to do his pixelations. So
I mean, Hockney is,
Hockney is one of my
is
heroes.
going on
He
his,
is one of my gods.
his iPad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if he can do it, I guess we can all.
Yeah, but it's kind of nice to see that the students are going back to a more traditional way of working. Awesome.
Well, I appreciate that insight. I think not a lot of us get to that. So thank you for that and for sharing your work with us. So now let's move on to Aprajita and Chelsea. So maybe Chelsea, I'll have you go first. Again, an intro, your name, where you're based, and the kind of art that you create.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, my name is CJ McWillis or Chelsea, either one is fine. And I'm from the Bronx, New York. And raised there, been there all my life. And I draw, write comic books like this one. And occasional illustrations here and there, like this one right here. But primarily comics. And basically, I use my comics to like express and explore things that I like conflict, loneliness, love, and cool Black heroines and cute animals. Just absorbing what I like and making a story out of that. And while doing comics, I like listening to music that matches the energy, so I can get like a flood of ideas going. And I also love Beyonce's Renaissance. So Mackenzie, I'm really excited to see your take on the album cover. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. And thank you for that. So I will just go into your question now. Your work is, at least for a lot of the work that's in the festival, you're, I think, if not the only one, you're one of the few artists working in sort of the comic book sort of medium. And I'm curious to know sort of what is, for you, is the most challenging, what you find most challenging when you're creating comics.
So it's all a challenge. Like the writing, the penciling, the inking, like it's surprisingly can be pretty hard when you're like polishing a comic to make it, good. But the most exciting challenge for me is actually like the initial stages, like the storyboarding and the thumbnailing. Like I have, let me see if I can. Yeah, like things like this, like my sketchbook's a mess, but you can see like little like pages in there. Yeah, it's so I take my pencil and that's where I do like my panel layouts, my compositions, poses. It's where I do like a lot of research, which, you know, I look through a lot of art books, a lot of comics, manga, and a lot of other artists and painters like Frazetta. I'm really getting into his anatomy. I really like how he does anatomy. And yeah, it's the stage where I get like a lot of like ideas and the adrenaline is rushing. So like my pencil is trying to catch up to my brain with the many things that are going on. I also really like the inking stage. So I take like black ink, either traditionally or like in Clip Studio, and like I ink over the pencils to give it like a better like production quality. And I just love like the high contrast black and white line art, which is why I love a lot of manga and black and white comics like Love and Rockets. And like finishing like an ink page is pretty like satisfying to look at, like, you know, like this one, or like this one. Like I just like looking at the black and white.
Yeah. That's
and
great.
yeah, and the most difficult for me, I guess, would be like that I don't really like too much would be like the actual penciling stage. So like actually like drawing like the finished pencils and stuff like that. And it's hard because then I have to like get serious and like make sure the anatomy is atomically correct and like the composition makes sense and it's clear, it's readable, stuff like that. So this is like my pages that I've just finished a chapter for a book, and yeah, it's can be like a lot of work, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's
when
back to what
done.
Sharon was saying about art is communicating. That probably is the most.
Oh yes, communication
Yeah.
is key in comics because
Yeah.
like if they don't understand what's going on, then it's confusing to read and it takes them out of the story. So that is a big thing for me because I have taken some classes here and there for like illustration and art, but I mostly like have taught myself how to make comics by reading a lot of the books and going on YouTube. So it's definitely like a trial and error for me, but I have been a part of like Discord communities and being at like conventions and meeting other artists and like just bouncing ideas off of them and getting their critiques and stuff like that, and just getting ideas, you know, like how their process and their craft. So definitely still a learning experience for me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's when we were talking with Roberta a little earlier, right, about sort of, you know, finding other folks in your community that can help you sort of critique, improve. Yeah, it's great. And Discord, right? It's not just all in person, even more so now doing it online. I love that. Well, thank you, CJ, for that. So yeah, let's move to Aprajita.
Hi, Erwin.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind just introducing us, where you're based, and the work that you do, then we have a question for you after that.
So I'm based in New Jersey, and I always say that, you know, this is my 4th time working with Rockland Art Festivals consecutively for last 4 years, and that is precisely my art career as a professional artist has been. As a professional, I did my master's in computer applications, but I kept painting right from childhood, and that's something that, you know, was God gifted, or, you know, my mom just instilled those seeds while I was a little kid, and that's what kept me going. I knew nobody in my network or family or friends who was from this industry. But when I moved here in 2018 from India, as the pandemic happened, I decided to just quit my corporate world and wanted to just pursue my passion for art, and that's precisely where I am. So 2020 to 2024, amazing collaboration with Rockland Art Festivals, because probably that was my second exhibition where I got to meet few artists and was able to show my works in public. So it's been great. It's been great.
Yeah.
I often paint. So I get a lot of energies. I get a lot of inspiration from nature, and I feel very quiet, peace. I just get a lot of good vibes when I'm outdoors, when I'm observing things, even in winters when I see the skies changing colors, although there's nothing great to see during especially this time of the year, but still that just enchants me, and I just end up painting, those little inspirations or those little observations that just stay with me, and I come back to my studio and I just try to create those.
I love that. Yeah, and we can see some of those art, the works behind you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on, when I was looking through your website and your artwork, what struck me specifically was, as part of your story, sort of this trajectory that you had taken from once you switched from your corporate career, painting through lockdown, to where you've been able to display all of your work and the fairs that you've participated in. And so that's why the question I wanted to ask is if for the people who want to do that, and at least from conversations I've had with people, other artists starting out, they're very hesitant. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. It's sort of this mystical black box of a process of a stage to get to as an artist. If you had one piece of advice for someone who wants to get into that, what would it be?
I think it is very important for any artist or every artist to be able to showcase their work to the wider audience and be confidently able to express what's the story behind that work and, behind yourself. And I think a lot of artists are, and I keep reading. Frankly, I didn't come from this as a professional background. I didn't go to an art school. I had nobody to really tell me what to do, what not to do. So there was a lot of hit and trial that I did. I went from gallery to gallery in New York. I live in New Jersey, but I would make trips to city just to visit galleries, just to, observe, imbibe the understanding. And I realized, so I did a lot of exhibitions with different galleries in New York to start with. But then I realized these art fairs get way more eyes and footfall, where you're able to showcase your works better. And that definitely boosts your confidence. It gets you the right critique as well. There are times when people have a very long conversation with you about your art. So when you get to interact with the real art lovers, that's when you get the right feedback coming back to you as well. And that just keeps, and as a person, not irrespective of which background you come from or what you do, as a person, if you're open to learn things, that just takes you a long way. And yes, there's a lot of risk that you need to take. I agree, all these big art fairs. So I did Art Expo. This will be my third year doing Art Expo New York. I did Art Expo. I did Affordable Art Fair, which is amazing too. But last year I went beyond my comfort zone, went to Miami during Art Basel and showcased my works in Spectrum Art Fair too. You may not sell instantly, but at the same time, your investments are high. So if I have to give you a rough figure, any fair would cost you at least $5,000 to $7,000. It's a huge investment. But when you start a business, of any form, you need to have some kind of a seed investment into it. One is you're just following your passion. Another is you want to make it big. You want to treat that as a business and as a living for yourself. If you want to treat that as a living for yourself, then you need to take those risks.
I love that.
Yeah, so
Actually,
there are
yeah,
times when I come back and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't sell enough. I didn't recover my cost. And my husband would say that expo means exposure. Expo doesn't mean that you're in a sales market. You're not selling. You're showcasing your work. And the more people start knowing you and identify your works, and frankly, in Rockland Art Festival itself, I had 2 couples visiting me constantly every year. And they ended up purchasing last year. You know, they've been visiting me in other fairs as well. And they've been seeing you. For an investor to invest in an artwork, they need to see what's your trajectory as an artist is. Are you serious about your art career? Or you're just doing it as a sidekick? You know, because one is you just want your art to be out. So you think, oh, I have so many pieces, I want to make some money out of them. Another way of thinking about art is you want to make your career as an artist. You want to leave this world and leave a legacy behind you as an artist that people are gonna remember. So if you want to do that, to the second part, then I think it is very important to take it as seriously so that your buyers are serious about investing in your art. I always say I'm not selling art. I am asking you to acquire my art. It's an acquisition. It's not a purchase. So the moment you start shifting your mindset, you will be able to influence your collectors to shift theirs as well. And that will bring confidence in them to put those $1,000 for your artworks.
I love that, Aprajita. I think that was a great and I think that you know, I had asked you to sort of give me this one sentence answer, but really it's such a nuanced approach that you have to take. You know, there's a lot of preconceptions that we have about art, right? There's a lot of mindset things that you have to think about if you really want to make this something that you want to, and any decision you decide to approach your art with, whether you want to just sell work, like you said, or you want your work to be acquired as part of a legacy that you leave.
Right.
There's many ways to do it, but you just have to be, you know what you're coming into it with, so you know what it is.
You need to know what is important to you.
Exactly.
Right?
I love it.
Yes, there are so many people, and I feel blessed. I feel blessed that, you know, I have a very, very supporting spouse who always brings me back on track whenever I'm getting digressed. There are times when I said corporate money was easy. I was making a good money. I worked in that field for 17 years, right? So that was a long time, and I was doing well. I was at senior levels. I was into IT. I was working with JP Morgan and Chase as a vice president. That was my last job. And I was making good money. So I would go back and say, I was like, this is not working. This is very hard, you know? And he would say, you gave it 17 years. That's when you started making that money.
Yeah.
You know, give at least 5 to this and see where you get. There are times when I'm like, you know, everybody goes through those ups and downs. And when you're trying to run this as a business, it's not easy. It's not easy. If I was doing this with my job, you know, I would not have that kind of a commitment to what I'm doing right now. So my studio is always a mess. I'm working on my laptop. I'm doing my social media. I'm doing classes. I'm applying for fairs. I'm trying to, you know, there are times, so this is where I'm participating, but there are times when there are a lot of artists that I know, or we've been, slowly that network has started growing. So we invite each other for events. My commute from New Jersey to the city is 2 hours one way. I go all the way to the city, attend those events, be a moral support for my friends, because everything goes hand in hand. We have to support each other. Unfortunately, the system needs a lot of reforms. It doesn't support the creative people with the kind of financial recognition that they should get. So, frankly, you would never hear a starving dentist, starving doctor, starving engineer. Why is that term only for artists? Because the system does not guarantee you bread on the table.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not
you're right.
easy. We're always trying to make our ends meet. So that's not easy.
No, it's not. But I think we have a lot of food for thought there. So we'll pause that there, Aprajita. But I think that there's a lot of, if you're not seeing the chat, there's been a lot of very there's a lot of support for all the points that you've raised, and I think there might be another webinar or conversation we can have there at a future time. But I really appreciate all of that.
Sure.
And I'm glad we asked you that question. So
Eric,
I know
I would be more than happy to have a word with you, or anybody else, who needs who wants to have a word with me, just reach out. I think most of the information is there on Rockland Art Festival's website.
Yes, and we will share all of that information, everyone's contact information after. But I just want to be mindful of time. We're running a little bit over, but we do have one more pairing who I really would love to hear from. So it's Rina and Dara. So Dara, if you want to go ahead and then just start with introducing you, where you're based, the work that you do, and then we can go into questions.
Okay, great. I'll go first. My name is Dara Kane, and I live in Bronxville in Southern Westchester. I've been collaging for a very long time. It started out as just something that I did with my sister while she was recuperating from a medical procedure, but it just took off for me. I just love doing it. And it started out just as like a pastime, and then over time grew and grew and grew. And my collaging practice has evolved as I've evolved as a person. It's so interesting to see all the collaging over time, because I feel like it tells a story, it tells my story. And currently I am doing a lot more collaging where I'm incorporating other art mediums and techniques, working on texture and volume. I'm also sewing. Sewing is something that sort of is also integral to my family story. My grandmother sewed. She taught me how to sew. It's like a legacy thing. And I just think it's it brings in sort of a handmade quality. Most of my collaging is, I would say 95% is repurposed materials. And I'm very emphatic about it. It's a part of my process. Being environmentally conscious, not purchasing materials to use in my art, finding things and finding new ways to reinvent them. Part of my art practice is the finding part. It's almost as important as the art making, collecting, gathering, and that is what inspires my work. When I sit down to start working, I look at my materials, I take them out, and I let those materials guide me in my art making. During the pandemic, I observed so much packaging and boxes. It was everywhere. And out of a concern for the environment and and recycling or repurposing cardboard became a part of my collaging practice. If anybody's worked with cardboard, it's incredibly hard to work with. But I looked for stickers, I looked for barcodes, I looked for designs on the cardboard to kind of use in my practice. That's one example of gathering and collecting and being aware of the environment. And then the other part of my practice is the inspiration part. Where do I get my ideas? What do I want to say? I look into my environment. I'm inspired by nature. I'm inspired by the patterns in nature. I'm inspired by the colors I see, the shapes I see, and I work to incorporate those into my collaging. Nature gives me so much calmness, and it's so soothing. So I try to reflect that in my collaging practice. Travel, someone had already mentioned that. Travel is so important for inspiration and architecture. I'm a huge Frank Lloyd Wright fan. He has inspired me so much, and it's the lines of Frank Lloyd Wright that I often gravitate to in my own collage work. I find line to be super important. I also, for a period, was a textile designer. So I'm always going back to that composition, line, shape, color. It's sort of an innate in me, and I see that in my work as well. I work here. Can I just add, I just wanted to say, I work in New York City, and every day I walk by this construction site on my way to school where I'm a teacher. And in New York City, there's always these wooden walls that they put up to protect the site and protect you. And people put advertisements all along these walls. They're so interesting. And lately I've been inspired because the advertisements go up and within days they're all torn down. And within that tearing process, I found so much inspiration that I'm using that now in a series. It's additive and subtractive collaging. And in that tearing and taking away, there's just so much beauty underneath there. So it is, my collaging is a lot about the materials and then about my environment and how that affects me.
I love it. Thank you. It was such a holistic way of explaining your work, and I see the one that you have behind you, of course. And I saw a few on Instagram when I looked at your account, but just you describing that, I can already picture in my head the kinds of work that would be created by the processes that you were talking about. And I was particularly struck when you said that finding the materials is part of the process. And I think, especially when you go into your storytelling, when Aprajita was talking about being able to talk about your work, and I think that just adds another layer to the story, right? So it's not just the process of what you did to create it, but it's also the provenance almost of the materials that you were using to make that, and adds another layer. So I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Collecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. So, Rina, sorry, last but not least, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, my name is Rina Young, and I live in Manhattan in New York City, but I grew up in Riverdale in the Bronx, so I didn't get very far. I work, the work you see behind me is a monoprint. I use a gel plate to create these. I'm using various sizes and so on. This was sort of the silver lining of COVID. I needed something to kind of make me not go crazy. I live in a small apartment, so I needed something that was workable and so on. My background, I'm a jewelry designer. And I've done a lot of drawing and photography and so on, but somehow this just let me use all this color. And so that was such an inspiration to me and so exciting. So I just started mixing colors and so on. And it's sort of, when you ask about inspiration, it kind of comes from the color itself and the technique. For example, this is when you gel print, you take the paint, you put it on a plate and so on, and you pull a print. And over time, what happens is the paint starts to, some of it dries and so on. So what you do in subsequent places, subsequent prints, is you're picking up some of the ghost prints and so on. So this would be like, let's say the 10th or 12th iteration, and you see the different layers. So, you know, that was like a process. And what I love about the printmaking, as opposed to like drawing or something, I don't actually know what I'm going to get. And that surprise kind of got me through a lot of COVID. And like I said, I work in a small apartment, so a lot of the pieces started out very small. And so that was also helpful with that. And then as, you know, the time went on, I got a little bigger and so on, but somehow the jewel-like thing, maybe because I'm also a jewelry designer, I work very small, I kind of like that size to work with the pieces and so on, and kind of express, you know, something very big in a very small space. The work behind me is actually 12 by 12 inches. And then the next step, though, what happened was I started titling them, which I was sort of up on the fence about this, you know, because art is sort of serious and so on. I've seen a lot of things, but then that other part of me kind of came through and I got a really positive reaction. People liked it. This one is called Her Favorite Color Was Tuesday. So it sort of expresses, you know, the kind of visual aspect that I love and kind of, you know, exploring the color and the shapes and so on. And then that other part of me that just is that sense of humor that my friends love, sort of. So, for example, so I work very small. So this one is, these are the sizes, some of, you know, this is 3 by 5. This is a plate that I've used a lot. So I get a lot of color in a small place. And this is kind of like the last layer. And these are kind of picking up from other layers and so on. This one is called Frank's favorite tune was Neptune. So, you know, and people ask me where the titles come about, and they're just from random listening to Nova specials or science, various things and so on. So yeah, so now that I'm working bigger, it's the change in scale is really challenging. So I've just bought some 30 by 30 pieces to work with as I get back to the studio and so on. And it is really what I love about it is there's always a challenge to it, and there's always something different coming from it. And I get my inspiration from the paint itself or from anywhere, from looking at like interiors and so on and seeing the gray walls and the pink sofa and seeing that juxtaposition of color, or from like some fashion thing where, you know, it's kind of gray and then there's like this spot of like bright acid neon. So with jewelry, it was all about the form and so on, and I love that. But here, the color just is sort of endless in terms of possibilities. So.
Yeah, and I love that you can sort of go back and forth, right? Almost like if you're you know, I don't want to speak for you, but like if you were looking to play with form, you would do that with jewelry. But if you're looking to play with color, because the shape is already pretty much predetermined, right? It's just always going to be sort of in that rectangular, say it's a 3 by 5, you're playing with color instead. So yeah, there's room to experiment within the parameters that you've been given in the medium you're working with. I love that.
Yeah, and some of the process starts, like I'll start with a few colors. For example, this plate, I think, started with blues and so on, blues and greens. And then as I kind of pick up color, I put down new colors. And then, you know, there's a succession of different elements and so on. And in terms of what you're saying about inspiration, sometimes I'll talk to different friends and they're like, well, what if you do this or show it as a diptych? Because there'll be processes where, you know, A and B will follow and you can see that they're the same image, but they're different colors. The forms, the ghost forms are still there, but the colors have started to change and so on until the end where it doesn't look like anything I started with. So.
I love it. All right, so we are a little bit over time, if I can say a little bit. So that's it. Thank you so much. These are thank you to all the artists who came to share their work with us, share their inspirations, their processes, and you know, just to spend time with us this afternoon now. So I will sort of hand it off to Debbie in a second, but I just wanted to let you know that we will be sharing all the artists' information that they provided to us on the website, but we will include that in a follow-up email to everyone who registered to attend today's Zoom. So feel free to follow their work. If you have follow-up questions, I hope that they're willing to sort of talk to you about that. And let's continue sort of the collaboration, the communication, and we'll see where this goes. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today and to attend the Zoom. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll pass it on to Debbie.
I just wanted to thank everybody for spending the time today. The piece that I walked around, that I'm walking away with, besides being a little overwhelmed by all the information and all the love and all the free sharing of knowledge that's gone on, is the idea of creating and maintaining collaborations. That sums up what this morning was all about. So I'm going to remind everybody that we have many more things happening over the next 2 weeks. And if they go to www.rocklandartsfestival.org, they can sign up for all the wonderful things that are coming next. And now for the moment of truth, we are giving away 2 passes for 60 minutes at the Climb Zone. And if Sean Collette is here, will he raise his hand? I believe I saw him. Maybe he's not. Is he here? Do you see him? No, he's not. So we're going to go on to the next person. The next person is Joanne Casetta, and I know I saw her name on here. So if you would send your mailing address to rocklandarts@gmail.com, we will send you the passes, and you can take everything you've incorporated in today and climb a great wall. I want to thank everybody for your time. I look forward to seeing you as we do more and more things, and have an amazing afternoon. Thank you, everybody.